Hi, in this video we're going to talk about the game KYOTO, Money Makes the World Go Down. Pegasusspiele has asked me to play the game and give my thoughts on it. So in this video I'm going to give you an overview of how the game works and tell you my impressions on the game. KYOTO is designed by Sabine Harrer and Johannes Krenner. It's for ages 10 and up, takes 30 to 45 minutes to play, and it plays 3 to 6 players. KYOTO is a negotiation game set at a climate change conference. So you each play as representatives of major countries. So you've got the flags here for Canada, Australia, America, Russia, China, and the EU. You pick one of those countries and you're all working together to try and save the world from environmental collapse. But you also have your own agendas, your own goals that you're trying to complete to get points, and they work against the environment. So you're trying to do things selfishly for your country to make sure that you prosper the best, but also keeping enough of an interest in the world and the environmental issues so that the world doesn't collapse, the environment doesn't collapse. Because if that happens, the game ends, and the player who was the most selfish is going to immediately lose the game. The game is made up of a number of negotiation rounds, and you each take it in turns to be the speaker. And the speaker gets to choose the study that will be discussed in the negotiation. So the speaker can decide which study best suits their agenda. I really like this because it immediately makes you feel like a politician. You've got your secret agenda that nobody else knows, and they can't see these cards. So you can just pick the one that best suits you and pretend that they were both bad. So in this instance, you've got this card needs a reduction in climate change, whereas this one is asking for 150 tons of CO2 emissions to be reduced. They both require money to be put in, so this is $3 million, and that is combined from whoever is willing to put the money in. And then they have their expected damage. This is what happens if the negotiation doesn't go successfully. But as you can see from this card, the game is misleading the other players as to what might happen, because when you select the study, it goes into this lectern, and you have an expected damage, which sometimes gives you an idea of what's going to happen, but you can't see the actual damage. And so as the negotiators, you might be more inclined to save a certain study more than others. You might be inclined to make that round succeed more than others because you can see, oh, it's going to damage the animals. And we've got hardly any animals left in the world. They've all gone extinct. So we need to protect this. But then, of course, if it fails, this card gets revealed and you realize, actually, it's not affecting the animals at all. It's affecting the air pollution, and it's affecting it doubly. And this is where players' agendas really come into play, because if you have the Steel Lobby card here, you will gain 2 points if air pollution is the most advanced damage type on the board. Collectively, you're all trying to make sure that none of the damages tip over the edge and cause environmental collapse, because that will end the game. But you are sometimes trying to get certain types perilously close to the edge, because that's going to get you more points. So if I had the Steel Lobby agenda, then I would probably pick this card that was going to affect the air pollution. And maybe I wouldn't try and make the negotiation round succeed because I want it to fail. I just find that to be so thematic, such a great idea, that sometimes your vested interest is negative. And it might come back to haunt you in the end if you're too greedy, but it's such a fine balance about trying to be so greedy that you can get away with it, but not as greedy as the other players, or not so much that it pushes the whole world over the edge. And I think that just so perfectly fits the political situation that KYOTO is trying to get across. And it also just makes for such a fun dynamic in the game, because you don't know what the other players' agendas are. You've got your own thing that you're trying to keep secret. You don't want to give away too much what you want. And you can have these secret influences, like picking a study card that best suits your agenda. So once the speaker has picked the study, they read it out to the other players, what's going to be needed and what the expected damage is. And then you start a 90-second timer, and that is the negotiation round. So you only have 90 seconds in which to get it all done. Again, super thematic, and it just makes the game a lot more tense, because if you are desperate for it to pass, you want it to succeed, then you're desperately trying to get people to commit to making the reductions or contributing money, whereas other players might be trying to slow things down and they don't want it to pass, they want it to fail, so they're kind of being difficult with the negotiation. There are two things that a player can add to the negotiation to help it succeed. The first is money. So this particular study needs $3 million. That is collectively amongst the group. You can see on your reference card here that the player with the most money at the end of the game is going to get 4 points, the player with the second most 2 points, and the player with the third most 1 point. So there's always an incentive to keep your money, but sometimes you will have to give it because you don't want these situations to fail. The other thing that you can contribute to a negotiation round are these affluence cards. You're given a hand of these at the start of the game, and they represent things that your government can cut back on to help the environment. So here we've got offshore platforms, and this would reduce 80 tons of CO2 emissions, but it's going to affect the oil lobby, and it's going to help with animal extinction. So I can contribute that by playing it in front of my flag, and it's stuck there. I can no longer retract that unless someone bribes me to take it back. Every affluence card played into a successful negotiation round is going to end up in the reduced affluence area. So it's great for the environment, but not great for the affluence of your country. And this is something that's really going to affect your agendas. So let's imagine that the US player has the oil lobby agenda, and they are going to gain 5 points at the end of the game, but -1 for every oil lobby icon that's present in the reduced affluence area. So somebody played this offshore platforms card, and that has really hurt them because that's going to lose them a point because it's got the oil lobby icon. And that's where bribing comes in, because they didn't want this card played, but they can give that player money to try and convince them to retract it. When it's retracted, it goes underneath your flag, and you won't get it back into your hand until you next become the speaker. There's a clever balance with the affluence cards because they're all worth a point to you at the end of the game if they're still in your hand. So it's really encouraging you not to contribute, not to help the world. So you're trying to be the most miserly, ungenerous negotiator out of all of the countries. When the 90 seconds of negotiation is up, you have to see if you've succeeded. So you check the card. Have you played enough cards to reduce the emissions? And have you got the funding you needed? If you have, then nothing bad happens, but nothing good happens either. The card just stays there and you don't see what the damage would have been. But if you haven't contributed everything, you reveal what the damage was. So in this instance, there is 2 clouds get flipped over to represent the air pollution effect. This board represents how the world is doing. So when negotiations fail, you'll be flipping over these tokens to show the impact. So around the edge, you've got the clouds representing the air pollution. In the middle, you've got the animals that go extinct. And here you've got the thermometer representing the temperature. And if any one of them flip over the 5th token, then that's it. You've reached the critical threshold and the game will end prematurely. And what happens is you still count up the points as you would normally, but the player with the most points loses the game. And if you're tied for first place, you all lose the game. So it's really teaching you that being greedy and selfish hasn't worked because you put your greed and your country ahead of the global environment, and it's cost you. A clever twist are these symbols on the cloud and thermometer tokens. You don't know when you flip them over what you're going to get, but if you do get one of these symbols, it causes a snowball effect and creates another problem. So if you flip over this cloud token, you then have to flip over another thermometer token. And if you flip over this thermometer token with the cloud on it, you have to flip over another cloud. And so it creates this snowball effect that really represents the effects of runaway climate change. So it's deeply thematic, but also creates this tense situation when you flip over a token. Maybe it's going to make things even worse for you. It's such a clever way to show how it works in real life, that things have hidden effects. This is all connected, and a greedy politician might be only thinking of themselves and they think, oh, it doesn't matter if I cause more air pollution. But no, it does matter because it has an impact on other aspects of climate change. If you reach the end of the study deck, then you've played all the negotiation rounds, and congratulations, you've managed to avoid environmental collapse and reach the end of the game. At which point you all reveal your agenda cards and count up the points. There are 14 unique agenda cards in the game, so depending on which the players have is going to create a completely different dynamic in the negotiation proceedings because players will want different things in different games. And some of the more interesting ones are this antitrust division, which gains you 1 point for each lobby whose icon appears once or twice in the reduced affluence area. So they want a wide mix of industries to be represented there. And the environmentalist agenda card is really interesting because you actually gain points for having the fewest affluence cards at the end of the game. So making sure that you contribute more than other players. And you gain 3 points if no type of environmental damage reaches its critical threshold. I.e., if the game doesn't come to a premature end, if you reach the end naturally and you don't damage the environment too much, then obviously that's in the interest of the environmentalist agenda. These big game hunters want animals to be extinct, so they gain a point for each animal on the board that is extinct, and if at least 4 are, you gain 2 additional points. What I love about the agendas is that they all work together to create such interesting dynamics. All the players want different things. And so it creates such interesting negotiation where you can see that one player wants a certain card to come out, another player doesn't want it. So there's lots of bribes going back and forth. I had a lot of fun playing KYOTO. It's a really neat, simple negotiation that gives you such incentives to want certain things, to be selfish and greedy, which is what is so important in a negotiation game. But then with this extra element of having to think about the bigger picture and all work together, just makes it fascinating. Then when you add in the timed element of having to negotiate in rounds of 90 seconds, it puts such a great pressure on you to get it all done. I really appreciate how simple it is. The rulebook is quite small, there isn't a lot to understand, and yet you still get a really rich negotiation game from it. So this is absolutely perfect as an entry-level game, or for families, or anyone just wanting a lighter negotiation experience, because often negotiation games can be very intense and very long, and KYOTO is the complete opposite to that. But the best thing about KYOTO is the way it brings its theme out. It's such a unique, interesting theme, and it all comes across in the gameplay. It really makes you feel selfish and greedy playing as one of these countries. And then you're constantly reminded about how you have to work together. And this is why KYOTO is such a great game for kids, teenagers, families, because it teaches you about such an important modern thing, such an important issue, but it does it in such a fun way. And for adults, I really appreciate the satirical side of KYOTO. It doesn't take itself too seriously. There's something just fun about playing through what in real life is very serious and important and affects us all, almost like watching a political satire sitcom about a particular issue. It's nice to just have fun with your friends around this topic and not to get too bogged down by it. So I would recommend KYOTO to anyone looking for a lighter negotiation game. It's the perfect thing to replace something like Monopoly. It's shorter, it's more fun, it's more engaging. And also to anyone that is just really taken by the theme, because if there's one thing this game does well, it's bring that theme alive. So if you're interested in environmental issues or just modern day themes, then KYOTO is the perfect game. That is KYOTO, Money Makes the World Go Down.